there, and welcome to another episode on Let's Talk Football Careers with myself, Barry, and today's guest, Phil Brown. How you doing, Phil?
I'm really good, Barry. I'm really good. My journey, my football journey, takes another twist and another turn. I've just been relieved of my duties at Kidderminster Harriers, which is not. It's not a nice thing to happen to any manager, but at the same time, it's one of them things. I'm a bit long in the tooth for them kind of things to affect me in a negative way. I just think it's football. So at this moment in time, I'm sitting on my hands for a couple of months and looking to get back into the game.
See what comes up. Well, if it's okay, could we go right back to the start, Phil? When for your youth career,
there was 3 or 4 teams in South Shields that I was playing for, and my school actually was in Hebburn. So the town team was South Shields, obviously where I was born and bred. But I actually played for Jarrah, Hebburn and Felon town team, So I played against South Shields on a number of occasions. But I started my playing career in earnest, if you like. There was a couple of Sunday League teams that I played for. Represented St Hilda's. I represented the Red Duster.
I was just going to ask you about the Red Duster. I've got that written down there, but I didn't know what to come at. I was going to ask you. That was the same team as Ray Dunbar and Bobby Davison, is that right?
Bobby Davison, aye. That's we actually had a decent side. There was no doubt about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, we were winning things. I've just actually been. My son still lives in South Shields. He's 38, 39-year-old now, Jamie, and he just sent me a copy of that the Sunday League football has folded just recently in the Northeast, and I couldn't believe it because he's talking about 1989-90. He sent me the clippings from one of the local papers, and there must be 7 leagues on a Sunday, and there would have been 16 teams in each league, and not one of them are still alive at the moment, and it really saddened me. It really. It's one of them where it's only about 30, 35 years ago that the local leagues were absolutely bouncing. They were booming, they were producing players.
And that's where it all came from, yeah. All came
but I think the common denominator for me nowadays, Barry, is the fact that there's that much money in the academies in the Premier League and in the footballing world that Sunday League football's died because of that.
Yeah, it has. And it's a shame because it brought out, made everybody tough characters. And you see that now in the modern game. Where, the players are good athletes, but they're certainly not the tough characters like when you played, with Hartlepool and things like that.
100%. It got me to. Well, one of the directors was just walking along the touchline, and I was playing for Whiteley Celtic, I think, at the time, and he came along the touchline, and he was walking his dog on a Sunday afternoon, sorry. And he liked the looks of me, and he just invited me down to train on a Tuesday or a Thursday night with Hartlepool United, and that's how it all started. So you're literally playing Sunday League football. I was working as an electrician, and I got invited to play for Hartlepool United in the reserves to start off with, but eventually found me way into the first team.
It's mad. It's mad how it all just comes as quick as that. And I mean, like you say, you never had agents and anything really till probably the latter part of your career you did, But football agents that never came into it all,
No, they've got their own lives to lead. I know that, and don't get me wrong, you troll football. The footballing world, if you like, and you go to games midweek and at a weekend, and certainly on a Sunday where Sunday League football was concerned. If you troll it and you're looking hard enough and you've got enough time and spend enough time at it, you become a decent scout, and all of a sudden the agency larkers took over scouting, and that's the part I don't agree with. I think the genuine scout that stood on a touchline and spotted a player, instead of it being money orientated, the genuine scout is a dying breed, and it's such a sad sight, but it's the same as Sunday League football, the fact that it's died as well, but that's life.
Yeah, the grassroots of football has really moved on. I mean, I've spoken to so many, ex-players and such like that have played in the same time as yourself, and I mean, there was teams came after you and made bids, and you guys never even knew about it. Never knew a thing.
You couldn't, you wouldn't be able to find out, but bottom line is, they probably made. The fact that there were smaller teams coming after you, Hartlepool United were in the 4th division at the time, and don't get me wrong, they're non-league football at the moment, but at the time it was run by a local farmer, and he cut his cloth accordingly, and he had to go and look for players in the local leagues. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, at least you were producing from within, as it were, and I was South Shields, which was like 25-30 mile away from Hartlepool, but I had to start somewhere, and I borrowed my own man's car for to go to training on a Tuesday and Thursday night, and eventually found myself in the team. But I had to, you know, it was one of them where I had to finish my apprenticeship. You know, that was important to me. That, you know, I was already started a 4-year apprenticeship. I was sort of 2.5, 3 years into it when I was getting scouted by Hartlepool United. So, you know, for me, the importance of having a trade and also going into the professional game, it set me up for life.
Yep, and your electrician skills came in handy later in your career, I believe. There's a story with that as well.
We had a couple of scares. Don't get me wrong, I set my own business up when I was at Hartlepool because I just couldn't believe it when I from going from working a shift and then a half shift and then a weekend, a Saturday and a Sunday, you're working your tripe off, you know, to make some money as a sparky, and then all of a sudden I'm going into a job that's an hour and a half, 2 hours on the training ground every day, and I'm thinking, what do you do in the afternoons? What do you do at night? So I set my own electrical business up with my brother-in-law at the time, and I'd finished training. I was straight on a site, and I was doing rewires, you know. But it came in handy. It came in handy. I had I think the chairman of Southend was the one that came down the touchline one day. It was such a funny scenario. I tell you what, if a comedian was telling it, it's a funny story. I'm standing on the touchline, and the floodlights went out against Millwall. We were playing them in the FA Cup. And by the way, this is Roots Hall, Southend United. There was 11,000 at the game, and there was 2,500 Millwall fans in the right hand corner. And I thought, these lights have gone out, and this is the first time this has happened to me. And I'm thinking there was 2,500, and I knew where the fuse box was, and I knew where the lights, you know, where the mains was coming in. And the chairman came up and he just said, "Can you fix the lights?" I couldn't believe the question. So I fixed them. It was a fuse, and there were halogen lamps. I don't know if you know anything about electricity, but there were halogen lamps, and they take time to cool down and then pop up again. You know, so it took about 20 minutes to get it going. But he doubted me at first, but eventually I got the game on.
Yeah, did that not get you an extra contract? A wee bit extra on your contract or something?
Absolutely, it needs to be a little bit of bonus.
I'd be playing that card definitely. But you were at Hartlepool for 7 years, eh? I mean, thoroughly enjoyed your time there, eh? And I mean, that was you.
Yeah, it was 2 years. It was 2 years in as a non-contract player, and then I had 5 years as pro. So the day I picked my indenture forms up as a Sparky when I was 20-year-old, I jumped in the car and I was straight down to Hartlepool, and I was playing on the Saturday, you know, and that was the start of my career. And it was one of them. I don't know. I try to get into the modern day player nowadays. That when you do a pre-season, you know, I honestly believe this. If you do a pre-season, then you really have to put the hard yards in. You know, if you start a pre-season and you finish the pre-season in the first team, there's no real reason why you shouldn't be in there for 46 games, in my opinion. Unless the manager falls out here, you know, you lose form and this, that, and the other. But I always thought that the hard work that you put in the pre-season was priceless, and it was the start of my career, and it was the foundation of me having a long career. You know, I probably played consecutive games, about 170, 180 games for Hartlepool United before I got an injury or before I got suspended. And with that in mind, you know, it's something I've always carried with me all the way through my career, into coaching and into management as well.
It must be so hard when you hear modern day players, you know, and some of the, I mean, you guys all played with injuries. You've never even told that you were scared to mention an injury because you were at the team, you got injections, etc.
Well, you mentioned the word hardy, Barry. That's a proper Scottish word. If you were injured, you came into a physio that wasn't fully qualified. This is at Hartlepool, and his treatment for you was to walk in the North Sea. Quite simple, brain water. You see the cold water. You wouldn't spend too long in it, I'll tell you that. That's for sure. And you were back on the training ground. It was one of them. It was psychology at its finest. You know, we didn't have the technology. We didn't have the equipment. You didn't have the expertise. But you just got on with it. You know. And okay, you sometimes probably played injured. But how many times have you heard that from a pro footballer that nowadays they play injured? Not a chance. Not a chance. I probably played 750 games. And of them 750 games, I was probably only fully fit for about 150 of them. The rest of the time you're playing, you're getting strapped up with something, or you're getting, you know, you were sort of not injured all the time, but you had niggles, you know, and you just got on with it.
Yeah, you're never fully fit, eh? But I mean, it was, I think at that time, I mean, as well, you actually, like you mentioned earlier, you appreciate what you're doing. You're a football player. You're out there, you know you've got a short career, and you just want to play and play and play, eh, all the time.
You say you appreciate it. I really did. You know, I was my family didn't have too much in terms of finances. You know, my ma had a corner shop. Don't get me wrong, she had her own business, and my dad was a slater and tailor. He had a trade, and they looked after her. We didn't want for anything, you know, but we weren't loaded, you know. It was one of them where you become a pro footballer. I'll tell you, my first contract. My first contract was 80 quid a week, and I was getting 125 as a Sparky, you know. So look at it whichever you want to. I just wanted to be a pro footballer.
Yeah,
forget about the money. I just wanted to be a pro footballer. And I ticked that box basically for my mother. My mother was the footballing side of my family. My dad wanted me to have a trade. But the bottom line is when you tick them boxes, then you want to do the best for your family when you start having a family, you know. So you want to reach as high as you possibly can. And as a player, I didn't reach too high in terms of the technical side of the game. But as a coach and a manager, I got to the Premier League. So it's a long journey. It's a long journey. Where it takes you, you never know.
It's mad. I mean, you played, over your career, you must have played, I've got written down here, over 600 league games, scored over 50 goals as a right back. I mean, you were at Halifax for 3 years on top of that, Bolton for a further 6 years, and Blackpool before you retired. Was Sam Allardyce there at Blackpool near the end?
Sam was the guy who took me into coaching. I was very fortunate. I didn't sign for Sam. I signed for Blackpool, but Blackpool were managerless at the time, and it was a strange scenario. Billy Bingham, if you remember, Billy Bingham used to be the Ireland, national team manager, and Billy was on the board of directors at Blackpool under Owen Oyston. And he brought me along, and he was asking if I was going to go into coaching eventually. And I had 1 or 2 badges under my belt at the time, but there was quite a few stalwarts here. Kevin Sheedy was there, you know, Dave Bamber, Gary Briggs. We had some real good old pros at that level. And then when I'd signed, they were managerless, and all of a sudden Sam got the job. So he didn't actually sign me to start off with, and he didn't play. A lot of people thought me and Sam played together at Bolton. But we never. But that was the first time we hooked up with each other, and by word, you know, from minute one, we just got on like a house on fire. And I mean, what I mean by get on, I mean same page football wise, you know. And that was the key. If you're on the same page as Sam football wise, he's going to use you. And he offered me my first coaching opportunity in the game. I didn't thank him for the wage that he gave me, but at the same time, he offered me first chance, and I never looked back after that.
No, it's brilliant. I mean, I've got here Sam Allardyce assistant for 6 years. Colin Todd was involved as well, and then that was so he took over as caretaker at Bolton.
That's right. I went when Sam got the sack from Blackpool. He would talk about people getting sacked. There's no rhyme or reason at some stages, you know. But Owen Oyston was in jail at the time, and he sacked Sam from jail. And it was a really strange scenario because we only had 3 backroom staff apart from Sam, and that was me. And I went to Bolton Wanderers, and that was in the Championship. There was Mark Taylor, a physio, and he went to Blackburn in the Premier League, and Jack Chapman. And Jack Chapman went to Blackburn with Mark Taylor. So the three of us in the back room, we got promoted within, you know, from getting beaten in the playoffs at Blackpool, and Sam got the sack. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, long story short, he went into Notts County. I went to Bolton, worked with Colin Todd, got promoted, went to the Premier League, got relegated. Then Toddy resigned, and I had five games in charge.
And you won 4 of them, didn't you? You won 4 of them.
I won 4 to 5.
That's as easy, yeah.
Next thing you know, the door opens and Big Sam walks in. So we'd worked before together, and we were on the same page. And then, you know, he said, "Listen, let's do it again." And he said, "I'll put you know." He put his name on my CV, and I'll never forget that because he said, "Whenever you apply for a job, and I know you want to be a manager, whenever you apply for a job," he said, "I'll be the first one to recommend you. Just put my name on your CV." And that's exactly what I did. And it wasn't 6 years later. I only had 3 interviews. 6 years later, and I got the Derby County job.
And that was after you took over for George Burley, I believe, and that
George, George, I always rated George. I love George as a player. He was in the same position as me, so as a right back. And I think in them days, you know, back in the day, before the modern day coach nowadays is talking about the game starts from the goalkeeper, the modern day coach back in the day used to start from a fullback and the right back and the left back. So it came from the goalkeeper, but you started the session. And I always thought George was a great technician. I thought he was a fabulous footballer. And I'm not saying I based my game on George, but I really admired him. And then when I followed him in at Derby, I heard about the trials and tribulations of what were going on at Derby County. I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. But for George to actually, he actually bolted and locked the doors inside. the training ground, first team to the academy. He locked the academy out, and I've gone, ooh, what's this all about? So, long story short, he paved the way for me to start my career.
All right, and that's how you came through. And I've got written in here, you were 7 months in the job. No, sorry, let me just read that again. Took over from Judge Burley in June 2005, 7 months in the job, lasted till January 2006. That was when you really felt the harshness of it all. It was a 6-1 defeat to Coventry, I believe, eh?
It was a horrendous, horrendous defeat, and it was one of them where I've heard many times managers have said it. You know, certain results get you the sack, and that was the result that got me the sack. I was surviving one of the, I've got to say, one of the harshest apprenticeships, and I've already talked to you about being an apprentice electrician. You're serving your time as an electrician, you're serving your time as a player, you're serving your time as a coach, and then you go into management. This was a harsh 6-7 months in the career, and it really did stand me in good stead, Barry. Albeit it was harsh, and I could tell you a lot of stories behind the scenes, but you know, it stood me in good stead for what was to come.
And I mean, the fairy tale after that is you joined Hull City. After that, you were joined on the 27th of October as first team coach and took over as caretaker alongside Colin Murphy on 4th of December 2006. And Hull were currently in 22nd place in the championship at that point, eh?
That's right, aye, and the job was to survive, and that's what we did. And I didn't want that to be, you know, sometimes you can get tarred with that brush, being a survival champion, being a survival manager. I didn't want to be tarred with that brush, but at the same time, that was my job. You know, we just had to get enough points to finish outside the bottom three, and that's what we did on the last day of the season. And then the following year was
the bit.
Yeah, that was the straw, not the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the piece that made me career, you know.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, you described this previous, and just to summarise so that anybody that's watching, best season of your career, won promotion via the playoffs, beating Bristol City at Wembley on May 24th, 2008. And you've previously, I think, described as best day of your footballing life without a shadow of a doubt.
Without a shadow. At the time,
can you go over it just a wee bit, please? Could you go over it just a wee bit? You know, the playoffs and getting up and
it was a strange setup. You know, we had Watford over 2 legs, home and away, and it was away first, and we went there and we got a good result. We were winning coming into the second game, and then they scored just before half time, and it was one of them put the mockers on were a wee bit. You know, the plans to get through, etc., etc. But that season was an unbelievable season. We almost started off in the same vein as what I'd inherited. And what I mean by inherited, I inherited a team that was 22nd, as you just said, and it was a survival campaign. It's a different kind of mentality, Barry, you know, when you've got that kind of mentality where you're hanging on to a point, or you're hanging on to 3 points instead of going into a game prepared to win or prepared to get a result. It's a difference in mind process or thought process. Anyway, at the start of that season, 10 or 12 games into it, we're fourth bottom, I think we were. And then all of a sudden, we just got a couple of signings in. Next thing you know, we're middle of the table. Next thing you know, we're just outside the playoffs. The next thing you know, we're just in the playoffs. And then we had an opportunity to go up automatically, and we missed out on that, and got promoted through the playoffs. But what a fantastic way to get promoted. I mean, Watford over 2 legs, brilliant. And then Bristol City at Wembley. Dear me. It was the tightest 1-0 I've ever been involved in my life. Unbelievable Windus goal. And strangely enough, I just had Fraser Campbell on the phone last night. It's amazing because it bonds you for the rest of your life. You know, when you go through success like that, it keeps people that you've known all them years. You don't have to pick the phone up every 5 minutes. They're just every so often out of the blue.
And you just reunite, and you have shared the same experiences, and you can take yourself back there right away.
Straight away to that day, to that moment, and then all of a sudden you're promoted to the Premier League, and and then you've got a job on your hands. You know, you've all of a sudden got a different budget. You've all of a sudden got a different mindset. You've all of a sudden got a different group of players, but you want to hang on to the players that got you there as well. So all of them things are, you know, balls that you're juggling with, and we managed to juggle them and be successful as well.
And that was the first time Hull had actually been in the Premier League, I believe, as well, in their history there.
104 years, and you know, it was just fantastic what we did for the area, you know, because I believed in the supporters, Barry. I believed in I always have done. I've always stood on the terraces at the Fulwell end at Roker Park. I supported Sunderland all my life. I always believed in the supporters were a big part of the club.
Yeah.
And as a manager, you owe to them to understand them. And I mean understand them. I don't mean play the kind of football that they want to play, because you've got to cut your cloth accordingly, but understand them. And I had supporters on the terraces at Hull, and I knew them because I knew Brian Horton very well. And then Brian Horton's managed Hull City, played for Hull City. I knew a lot of players that had played for Hull City in that area, and they all, they felt for the fact that, the 12-mile radius, there was a fishing industry in Hull, and it was renowned for it, but there was 3 generations of deprivation, because grandfathers, fathers and sons, no money, no industry.
Yeah.
They came to Hull to watch a team graft and play, and you don't have to be brilliant on the ball.
No.
Just work for a living,
Yeah.
And when I got that point, that synergy with the supporters, when I got that point across, that I understood them, I didn't think I could fail. But at the same time, the Premier League is a different kettle of fish. It's a different animal.
It is. But I mean, you're totally right in what I'm trying to tap into, is getting myself across as a fan and representing fans as well. When you lose a result, the first thing that you hear the fans saying all the time, if you didn't feel that the players are putting in the full effort, is it's all right for you guys. They've not got to go to work and get the piss taken out of them by their fellow workmates. But you understand that, and that when you can put that into the players and the fans can see that,
well, it wasn't just, it wasn't just fathers and grandfathers. I mean, some grandfathers had moved on and passed on, and grandmothers. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, I'm here marking what I was going through at the time. The female side of the game is fantastic nowadays, and it's really good that we can tap into both sides now. But at the same time, I was going to schools. I was talking to kids, and they were talking about the fishing industry. If they're talking about the fishing industry, I need to know about this industry. I mean, when I worked in a factory, okay, it was on the banks of the Tyne, but we had shipyards, we had the mines. But I went through the problems what we had back in the 70s and the 80s when Thatcher was in charge, and there was lots of strikes and all sorts of things going on. I went through all of that, and I honestly think understanding that footballer then had an, I don't know whether it was a right or they should have understood what the supporters that were standing on the terrace couldn't afford to be there, but they still went.
Yep, that's the sacrifices. You know that, eh?
They still paid money to go in there, and they probably had to beg, borrow, and steal to get the money. If not, they were jumping over a wall. Is there such a problem where that's concerned? You want to go and see your team play? I loved it, mate. I think if you can get hand in hand with the supporters, you've got a great chance.
It's amazing, eh? I mean, that season you stayed up, the first season, and can I reference to you singing on the pitch at full time as well? You like
100%. Listen, I've been tarnished by that brush now, and I don't want.
There's nothing wrong with it, honestly. It's football, man.
Well, people say that Jimmy Bullard got, he took the mick a wee bit, and I knew Jimmy very well.
Aye.
And Jimmy got a monkey off me back, if you want to call it that. It was real. It was hanging over my head. You couldn't breathe. You couldn't talk to people because everyone wanted to point a finger. They wanted. I had people that were sitting down in the streets. There was like 25 blokes sitting in front of me and asking me to tell them off, and I'm like, I'm understanding what they're trying to do. Okay, it's a gimmick. It's a bit of a Mickey take, But bottom line is, I was trying to get on the same page as supporters. We had 5,500, 6,000 travelled that day to the Emirates. To the Etihad, and we were just uncharacteristically poor. So 4-0 down at half time. I got wind that one or two, had been out the night before and they weren't at it. And I just that was it as far as I was concerned. They deserve better, That's all I did. The supporters deserve better, and I was giving them what they were going to get inside. And by the way, when I went inside, it continued. It wasn't if I've done it for the supporters and now you're off the hook. So I made a couple of changes. Second half, we got a point. Second half, if you want to call it that, but I put a couple of stalwarts on. Craig Fagan, who's been my assistant manager at Southend, good lad. He's in the playoffs now in the National League South, So he's going in the right direction coaching wise. But a couple of players that I put on restored the faith a wee bit. But the next time we went to the Etihad, which was the following year, we got a 1-1 draw, and Jimmy Bullard scored the penalty and then took the mick with me. But I'll tell you what, you can take the mick with me like that anytime you want to.
Aye, definitely. I mean, it's, you're looking at. I mean, I was speaking to guys at my work and that's instantly made. Do you remember Phil Brown? That was the manager who told them off. It's iconic because it did resonate with supporters, and whatever anybody says, it was genuine. It was. I would like to see that. It wouldn't bother me seeing that.
Barry, I had two lads on the touchline, and I swear by both these lads. You know, Brian Horton, probably over 2,000 games as a manager, let alone 1,000. Brian Horton, assistant manager, and Steve Parkin. Steve Parkin's now doing an absolutely brilliant job at Wrexham, working with Phil Parkinson. He's an assistant manager there. He was my first team coach. I asked both of them because they're from different backgrounds and cut from a different cloth. And I just said to him, I'm thinking about doing a half-time team talk over there, where in front of the supporters. And Brian went, yeah, no wrong with that. And then Steve went, are you sure? And Steve just had that little bit of reticence to him, you know. He just had that little bit sort of withdrawn side to him. And I went, I've made my mind up, here we go. Hey, I walked across there. Steve was right on my right shoulder, and Brian was on my left shoulder. And the first bloke that about turned and walked across to the far corner where the supporters were was Ian Ashby, who was the club captain, who had captained the club right the way through, second, first, Championship and Premier League. What an absolute legend.
Right.
He turned round, he went, absolutely, this is rubbish. So he was the first one over there as well. So I don't care what anybody say anymore.
Nah, you wouldn't. You live by it. You stand by what you done, and good on you for it. But I mean, looking at some of the games, I mean, listen to this. You must be in dreamland. You won your first match and you beat Fulham, and then you beat Arsenal, then you beat Spurs, then you beat West Bromwich Albion. You won Manager of the Month. You'd be like, what the hell is going on here? I mean, what's your memories of just certain games and certain managers and players and that? There must be some that stand out.
Strangely enough, there's, you know, when you went through it there, the first game against Fulham, I think the chairman at the time, he loved the supporters as well. He was Paul. It was difficult to stop Paul from getting involved in anything, you know. Anyway, long story short, he decided to buy a big bell, and he was ringing a bell. It was from an old locomotive that was called, named after Hull City. And he put the bell in the reception area at the new KC Stadium, and he rang the bell which was synonymous of 104 years in the lower divisions and first year in the Premier League, or first day in the Premier League. And it was the start of a fresh new, you know, outlook, a fresh new career, whatever. We're creating history here. Paul Duffin, honestly, he was first class with regards to relating to people and stuff like that. Anyway, long story short. We're 1-0. I think we're 1-0 down against Fulham, and we equalised. And then one of my strikers that had came off the bench and scored a goal. You can't write the script. Came off the bench and scored the winning goal, and it's your first job in the Premier League as a manager, and you're getting 3 points on your opening day, and it's like, where's this going? And you don't get carried away with it, but. We then got thrashed in the next home game by Wigan. I think we got pumped 5. But that brought us right back down to earth. But them journeys that you're talking about, Arsenal away, West Bromwich Albion away, Spurs away, we're winning games like, I just couldn't believe what was going on here. But we did our homework, you know. We just little things like, you watch Arsenal nowadays, all their game plan is now very, very focused on set pieces. That's all our game plan was. Can we stay in the game long enough that we create a chance from a set piece, because we know they're poor at them. Lo and behold, Giovanni scores an unbelievable worldie goal, 1-1, and then Daniel Kuzan gets who played for Rangers. Daniel Kuzan gets the winner, and it's like, from a set piece, header near post, we planned for it, you know. So that's all you can say basically. But we went to West Bromwich Albion. I thought to myself, this could be our opening day, you know. This could be a comeuppance, because everybody. West Bromwich Albion, where they're going to finish, you know, they've been yo-yo club over the 90s, and we beat them 3. I think we beat them 3-0, and it's an unbelievable, because a lot of people don't see the game; they just see they see the score, and they go, you know, West Bromwich Albion 0, Hull City 3, Premier League. Wow, what's going on there? And then people
that's what we call a coupon buster, Phil.
But people started to sit up and take notice, and that was the turning point. After 9 games. We had put that much of a marker down. People were like going, whoa, hold on a second. This is serious business here. So they started to take notice, and then we go to Portsmouth and get beat off Portsmouth. Then we go to Sunderland, we get beat off Sunderland. You know, it balances the books. And before you know it, we've got enough points in the first 9 or 10 games to have a bad patch. And I mean a horrendous patch, like the Etihad.
I think he's got up to third. He's got up to third at one point in the league,
Absolutely, aye. And that was nosebleed area.
It's got a photo of that and then just freeze it for there. But see, going on to next season, you also, am I right in saying you tried to sign Michael Owen? You were quite close to getting in a bit, signing
Where to
Michael
go? I had a chat with him on a racetrack, which is quite interesting because I love my horses, and he was well and truly into the breeding side of things, you know. But he's an intelligent lad, you know. It was one of them where he's, you know, regardless, they're coming at the end of their career, they can command massive money, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to sign an England international or a former England international and a goal scoring legend, and it was close. At least I had a conversation with him. That's all I'm saying. Trying to sign Bobby Zamora. That was close, and he was getting released by Fulham, and he was an England international. So I was going into that area of
you're tapping into a new market, eh?
It's different when you've had 1 year in the Premier League. Nowadays, it's 1 minute in the Premier League, you're worth 400 million. But 1 year in the Premier League, you're going to get another 70 million. And 70 million was a lot of money, you know, a lot of money then in them days. And we just had another year. So we had 60 the first year and was going to be 70 the second year. Plus, you've got your parachute payments. Everyone's doing the maths. But at the same time, there was still £1 million players around, you know. You could still talk to England internationals and you can actually give them a good wage, no transfer fee, and you could afford them, you know.
Balance it over 3 years, eh?
Yeah. But you run the risk of them getting too big for the club, that type of thing, you know, because the club has to go along at a certain. You have to go along at a certain pace, and I'm talking about everybody has to go along at that pace. All of a sudden you jump, and it may be the manager, you jump to a different level, a different pace, and you leave people behind. That's when you're in a little bit of trouble.
I mean, you moved on. You signed Jose Altidore, no?
Signed Jose Altidore. Why? £10 million, $10 million, sorry, worth of talent coming from America, going to Villarreal. And we could get him out of there on a season-long loan for £1 million, and it was affordable, very affordable. And when you see the footage of how he was doing in America, forget about Villarreal because his career didn't really kick on. But the footage in America was just phenomenal, and I thought, here we go. But I think between you and I and Jose Altidore will probably admit this now. I think the move to, you know, sort of the first black player to come out of America and go to Europe, and I think it was a move that was paved the way, you know, for black footballers, for American football to go to a different level. And Spain were taking a little bit of a chance, and it never worked. So I thought, well, go on, and we'll get the benefit of that not working in Spain. We'll bring him to Hull, but he brought in a lot of baggage, and he wasn't prepared to work. And that in itself, for me, just wasn't good enough, you know. If I'm going to bring a striker in, I've got to bring a striker in. You've got to work for Hull City because you've got to try and protect our defenders. With all due respect, we were top-end championship defenders, but we're in the Premier League. We need somebody to protect us by putting a press on, you know. And Jose Altidore wasn't prepared to do that. And albeit the footage was good, the whole picture wasn't, you know.
Nah, and it's tough trying to make signings at certain levels that you've never approached before, and you're learning as you go. I mean, you did make some cracking signings. I mean, I remember Gilas was superb. Camille Gilas,
aye, good little player.
So how did you hear about him, and where did you find it? I mean, how does this all come about?
We had a scouting network that was born out of our days together at Bolton Wanderers. Myself, Sam, Jack Chapman, Bobby Saxton, Bob Shaw. You know, all these are all tied in together. You know, we looked after each other, and whenever you went somewhere, and say for instance, Bobby Saxton's sitting on his hands in his house because he's not working that weekend, you go and watch a game for you, spot a player like that, you know, and you take him on the back of that, you know. Same with Sam, same with me, same with the scouts that I've mentioned there. Jack Chapman, God rest his soul, you know, he was the godfather of scouting back in the early 80s, 90s, you know. And he never changed, and he got all his backroom staff thinking on the same way as what he, you know, you had to do match reports. And by the way, I've been into a Monday morning meeting with Sam Halliday, Sam's assistant manager, Sam's manager, and Jack Chapman's first one in, and he's gone straight into Sam's face. Where's your match report? And he's asking him for a match report because he wants to do his, you know, fill the forms in. You know, he wants to keep his books in order. You know, and
it's that driving
the manager, where's your match report?
But it's that driving enthusiasm that took him up to that level, and like you say,
Absolutely.
their apologies bowed each other's respect to them. Aye, but for their own right, I mean, I'm just summarising here, but you left 2010 Hull. That was the 15th of March, and from there on, you moved to Preston, I believe.
Yeah.
You were a short time at Preston, though. You were appointed on the 6th of January 2011, replacing Darren Ferguson, but you just couldn't. There wasn't enough in the squad to actually help you avoid relegation, I don't think.
No, we were 10 points adrift, and unfortunately, when you replace Darren Ferguson, you're going to take on the mate of Sir Alex Ferguson, who had 3 United players on loan at Preston at the time and withdrew them. And then he got into Tony Pulis as well, and Tony had 2 on loan from Stoke City, and he withdrew them as well. So there was 5 players down on the first day. I wasn't expecting that. I really
and these
wasn't
are the
expecting
dynamics. Sorry to interrupt, Phil. These are the dynamics that are so different for playing at with Hull, where you're approaching players and then you're having to deal with things like this. It must be so difficult to try and adapt as you go.
You've got to. You're learning on the job all the time. Big Sam said to me when I got behind the chair the very first day as a manager in your own right. Forget about the caretaker manager role at Bolton. Forget about all of the coaching and this, that, and all the manuals. You throw them away. You're sitting behind that desk for the first day and you're on your own. And you're waiting, you're looking, what do you do now? You haven't got a clue what's going to happen, and you're living and you're learning on the job all the way through, until that moment comes along where you feel like you cracked it, and that's the day where you haven't cracked it. It's just an unbelievable position. And the Preston thing compared to Hull, oh dear me, massive difference, especially when you're taking on I'm taking on the hierarchy there. I didn't for 1 minute, and Sir Alex has accused me of this. I didn't for 1 minute stab anybody in the back. I didn't backstab. It's never been my style. I think I got accused of speaking to the chairman before the actual sacking of Darren Ferguson came along. That was absolute rubbish. Anyway, I'm not here to take anybody on.
No, I get what you're saying, though. Yeah,
I got the job. I'm going to defend myself, and the rest history, as it were. But I was 5 players down on the first day,
and that's how, again, talking about different levels, you start seeing the sort of nastier side, and it's can pick people hearing things for other people, and then it's coming back to you, and you're not able to actually stand up and say, "Look, I never said that," and please don't put that out there because it's already out there before, and that's a levels thing again, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. You've got to be really prepared, and it is the levels. There's no doubt about it. The higher you go, the bigger the fish, that kind of thing. You realise the power where it is, where it shifts to, etc., etc. I really enjoyed my time at Preston. I really did. It's a great football club. I know there's a massive Scottish connection. There's a massive Liverpool connection with Shankly and stuff like that. It's got unbelievable history. But I really enjoyed my time there, and if we had survived, and it was only a point, if we had survived that last day of the season, and stayed in the Championship, it could have done another Hull City. Who knows? If, buts and maybes,
Just small margins, But from there on, you went to Southend. 5 years, you succeeded with another fellow, Scott, Paul Sturrock.
Paul Sturrock, I'm following the Scotsman all over the place. But maybe there's some good managers, weren't there? There's some good Scottish managers.
Brilliant. I mean, when you list off Paul Sturrock, Darren Ferguson, previously we were talking about George Burrow, yeah.
Aye. So that's 3 on the bounce. I didn't realise that, by the way. It's the first time it's been pointed out to me.
I'll tell you what, better watch your back if you're a Scottish manager and you're
out to work to Edinburgh or Glasgow, eh? I'll tell you what I did do, though. This is a true story. On the day I got the job, the day I got appointed as Southend manager, I phoned up Paul Sturrock, asked him where he was living, not far from the ground at Southend, and Roots Hall it was, and it was walking distance. I had a press conference at 10:30 at Roots Hall. I went to see Paul Sturrock at about 9 o'clock that morning. Went round there to assure him that no skullduggery, nothing had gone on. I'd been approached, and this is the way it happened. I tied in everything that he was thinking with the way I was telling him had happened to me. And we sat there, and I didn't have the press conference till about 12:30. We sat there for about 3 hours, and I'm telling you, like a proper Scotsman, and I think he is. He gave me the low down on the whole club, everybody in that football club, whether he liked them, whether he didn't like them. It didn't matter to him. Then he's gone. But he gave me the lowdown on every player, waste of space. I shouldn't have signed him. I should have, all of these. And it was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely. Paul Sturrock, absolute legend.
And that, I mean, that shows the character of the man as well. And I mean, off the back of what happened, we're coming in off the back of and hearing this with Darren Ferguson's and all that, and then you're getting that, it restores your faith again in football. And again, it's just came down that level a wee bit.
I don't think the footballing world is a bad world. I just think everybody sort of gets into this desperation stakes. They want to be a manager before the time. They think they're better than what they are. And there's all sorts of rubbish about, But bottom line is, you get an opportunity, you've got to take it, and you got to do. You just take it in the right manner, And as a man, I'd like to think I'm a gentleman. As a gentleman, I've never, ever stabbed anybody in the back with regards to trying to get a job. Not a chance.
No, and that's what brings longevity. For my interviews, and I've spoken to a lot of managers that are still managing or just not long retired, and that's what brings the longevity in your game. Is if you just keep, nobody's got nothing on you, and you can just say, look, I tried to manage you the best individually and as a team, and if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But hey ho, we move on, and that's how it should be, and that's the respect that keeps you in the game for so long, Philly.
I hope so. I think that's why I'm still living and breathing football at the moment. I've got no fears of any contradiction from anybody, apart from supporters. If we don't play well enough, we don't win.
That's no a bit different. Can I ask, right? Just, I mean, I see you spent 5 seasons on the South End, right? But did you also go to India as well? Did you manage?
Yeah, I went to India for. I had Pune City in India. The connection there was Trevor Morgan. I played. Trevor Morgan was when I first went to Bolton Wanderers, late 80s. Trevor Morgan was one part of the strike force, and he played alongside John Thomas. And I stayed with Trevor, who became assistant manager at Exeter and Birmingham City under Terry Neal, I think it was. And anyway, he went to Australia, went to live in Australia, and he started managing over there and Oceanics, all of the places over there. And eventually, he wanted to get this job in India, but you had to have Premier League experience wherever you were coming from. You had to have managed in the Premier League wherever that was, whether it be Australia, whether it be Japan, whether it had to be the highest league. So consequently, when he failed the interview because of that, he recommended me, and next thing you know, I'm getting a job at Pune City. I then went from Pune City to Hyderabad. Yeah. And then I did 3 years over there in the production side of the ISL, trying to promote. It was decent. It was decent, to be fair. It was decent. I really enjoyed it. The promotion side of it, I was working for it's almost like working for the BBC, It's like the Alan Shearer of ISL, as it were.
I was speaking to David Robertson. He was a Scottish left back,
brilliant,
and he spent time over there. He done major work he got a British Empire medal and that, I believe, for his services.
Davy Robinson, I played a couple of pre-season friendlies against Davy. He was in the I League as opposed to the ISL, which is the Indian Super League and the Indian League. Yeah. It's almost like the Championship in the Premier League. But Davy, legend over there, absolute legend. And I came up against him in a pre-season one time, and I heard one of his team talks. I was right next door, and I wasn't here wigging out like that. I just heard this noise. I went, what is that? And I just listened, and that was an education in itself. Apart from the fact that the whole of the change room was Indian, nobody understood him apart from me. And I'm in the background. I'm a Scotsman with my brains kicked, like the Geordies that they call us, Unbelievable.
But it's funny how, even just with the guests that I've interviewed and the connections that I can bring round in that as well.
Absolutely. It's crazy, No, legend over there. Great guy.
Brilliant. And it's what football's all about. I mean, maybe being able to sit down with yourself, talk as a fan, and you're a fan, you're a manager. It's brilliant. And for there on, I mean, you done stint back at South End, you done a wee stint at Barrow, and your last job that you've just unfortunately just been relieved for, that was at Kidderminster, you were saying, eh? I mean, even your experience there, I mean, you've been to learn so much there at that level, eh?
It was, the first time it's not the first time I've been relieved of my duties using the mutual respect clause, because everybody uses that,
Yeah.
But it's the first time I've actually thought that mutually, this is probably right. The chairman I had a lot of respect for. The chairman, he was a very wealthy businessman, wanted to follow his father's footsteps, who used to own the football club himself. You know, there's a lot of history to it. The reason why I took the Kidderminster job was that Dean Holsworth was on the board of directors, as it were, as a director of football. And Brian Horton recommended it. He said one of the biggest non-league clubs, not just in the area, in the history of the game. And he went down and told me all about the way Kidderminster Harriers did this, did that, and I thought this has got a chance. Anyway, I inherited a team that was struggling. Seems to be a part and parcel of my life here.
Bring you in.
They went. They had won 4 games in 28, and then the manager lost his job. And we won the first 4 games. Can you believe it? And I thought, dear me, this is a miracle coming, you know.
You've seen this pattern
but eventually
before,
we reverted to Tide Barry, and we missed out with a couple of games to go, and then went into the National League North and missed out on the last day, getting the title. And then consequently, when you miss it last day of getting the title, you then don't get promoted through the playoffs. Then you have a mutual consent.
Mutual agreement, but you obviously didn't want to leave. I mean, you're passionate. You want to stay in the game, eh?
I want to stay in the game, and I'm absolutely adamant that I've got a position in the game somewhere down the line, whether it be advisory, whether it be on a board of directors, whether it be as a manager in a dugout, because I still have legs and energy for that, whether it be doing media work. I've still got a few irons in the fire with regards to all of that. So let's see where it goes. You know, let's see where it takes me.
See where your path leads you. Can I just ask, just before we round up then, Phil, right? So just a formation, so let's say 4-4-2, right? Could you name the best players you manage in each position? If you were to pick a team, try and just not even do it, but see what you can come up with.
Goalkeeper, Eddie Blackburn.
Right. Okay.
That's got you straight away, isn't it?
Aye, through right to the
he used to smoke with 20 fags before he went out. It was my first professional goalkeeper in the sticks at Hartlepool United, and I just never forget him. Don't get me wrong, I've had some great goalkeepers, you know, but you just remember Eddie Blackburn. Right back, I'd have to put myself at right back. Mind you, I'd probably put myself in the dugout as well. I've mentioned
when you hear a bad performance, eh?
Alan Stubbs, who we're going to go and do the Scottish line. Alan Stubbs would have been in my back four. What a centre half he was. And whether he's playing right hand side or left hand side didn't matter. He was he was
damn good. He had a great career up here in Scotland. Really good career. He's still been managing and all.
Michael Turner. We're saying Michael Turner from Charlton Athletic, I think it was. And then we let him go. And I had conversations with Rafa Benitez about this one. Rafa offered me 321 players from Liverpool and $1 million quid, and I had to turn him down because we had a cash offer on the table, you know. Michael eventually went to Sunderland, and I think we got 4.5 million for him.
Oh, yeah.
Left back always goes back to a guy called David Burke. Again, going back to my Bolton days.
Sorry, I just glitched a wee bit there. Could you just say your left back again? Sorry, please.
David Burke.
David Burke.
So me and David were right back and left back. And we used to have a competition. Who got the most crosses in? Who stopped the most crosses? Who got the most passes to a striker? All of them kind of things, you know. So he was the same age as me as well. So we went through the middle together.
Brilliant.
We had Alan Thompson as a midfield player that went for. He played for Celtic, didn't he?
Aye, another one that had a great career up here. Aye.
He went from Newcastle to us. We got him for about 100 grand, and then we sold him for about 4 million to Aston Villa, and then he went to Celtic after that.
Aye.
Jason McAteer midfield would have to be. I had a young David Lee. I don't know if you remember him. One of his greatest games was when we played at Anfield. We went Anfield, won in the cup, and Didzy was playing in front of me. But what David had was pace, and he put the fear of God into the opposition, you know. In the old 4-4-2 days. So I used to play behind him as a right back, and I could never get past him because he was too quick. But I would always support from inside, and then he would give me a new lease of life towards my game, you know. So David Lee would be there. I had a strike force. Andy Walker all day long. Goal scorer, phenomenal.
Machine.
And it would have to be John McGinley. A couple of jokes there, a couple of spots there. I probably missed the left winger, and I was going to throw Mark Patterson in there.
Yep.
So there's my team, and Bruce Playlock. Hey, there, another one, another Scotsman. Bruce Playlock would be my manager.
Aye. But you ever
if I was
manage
playing right back, Bruce would be the manager. If I wasn't playing right back, I'd be the manager.
Aye, but then you'd be able to get yourself around as well, and then you take that right. So, can I ask you ever had the chance to manage up in Scotland, or would you ever manage in Scotland?
I've had a couple of opportunities. I turned a couple down, and it was only because I had other offers on the table that were not. I wouldn't have said more attractive, because I've always quite fancied going up to Scotland. Beautiful country, love the country. We've been up there in a camper van, me and the family, the wife and the family have been up there many a time. Golf courses, obviously to die for. But I've had a couple of offers. I've had a couple of sniffs, but never actually managed to get over the border, which it's disappointed me, to tell you the truth, because I would for sure.
Aye, so I mean the door's open for that. If any clubs are interested in what to chat with you would chat with them at least, in Scotland.
You can be the agent, Barry. We're starting off with agents.
Got you started, right? Got you started. There's a Rangers job going on up here in the way of takeover. I'll get a wee word in for you that. But no, listen, Phil, it's been absolutely fantastic. What I'll do is I'll get all this edited. I'll thank you for coming on. I hope everybody that ends up watching this enjoys it as much as I've recorded it. It's been brilliant just sitting chatting with you and that. And it's been nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Barry. Thank you very much, and hope the listeners like it.